Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Game Things. I'm your host for the week, Ming, and today we're going to start our episode by talking about Google Stadia. Google has decided to pull the plug on the Stadia streaming service, which is unfortunate news for players that utilize Stadia. However, it's not all that bad. While Google has decided to pull the plug on Stadia, players can still access and play all the games in their library until the 18th of January next year, which is a decent amount of time away from now. On top of that, all hardware that was purchased will be refunded to players, and the refund will also be applicable to all games and DLCs that was purchased on the platform. So it really isn't all that bad. But it does still suck that we now have one less platform to enjoy games on. In any case, if you use Stadia to enjoy your games, then make sure to make full use of it before it's gone for good. The next major news we will be covering is the highly anticipated Dead Space Remake. So recently, we got a brand new gameplay footage for Dead Space that showcases the graphics as well as the overall story of the game. So if you have never played Dead Space before, it's basically you playing as a man called Isaac that is currently trying to fix a mining ship in space when he encounters some nasty creatures trying to kill him called necromorphs. Gameplay wise, there really aren't any crazy changes if you have played the original Dead Space from ages ago. It's basically the same thing, just that now the game runs in one single frame, meaning that the camera will not cut mid-game, nor will there be any sorts of loading screens until the player dies, which definitely increases the immersiveness of the game. Even though there aren't any new features, the game as a whole is still a great game if you enjoy the horror genre, so I would say that it's definitely worth your time to grab a copy and play it when it's released on the 27th of January next year. Even more so, if you have never played the game before, I actually really suggest taking a look at it. That basically wraps up our major news segment this week, and next we're going to talk about our flash news segment, starting with a title that is releasing soon that is extremely similar to Dead Space, and it's called Callisto Protocol. Now, if you have never heard of Callisto Protocol, you might be wondering what makes the title as good as Dead Space. The answer is actually pretty simple. Callisto Protocol was what the creator of Dead Space originally intended Dead Space to be. So, just like Dead Space, Callisto Protocol will be about the main character facing terrifying creatures in space. Just that Callisto Protocol takes place in a space prison instead of a, spaceship. And yes, the main character will be a prisoner, so you can imagine how difficult the game can potentially be. Next, we're going to talk about Wild Hearts, an upcoming Monster Hunter inspired game from EA and the devs of Dynasty Warriors. So as you might have guessed, the game is a Monster Hunter based game, but the theme of the game is more oriental, so a lot of the music and designs are centered around Asian culture, specifically Japanese culture. These designs include things like the creatures the players will be facing, as well as the weapons that players will use. Some of the creatures involved are phoenixes, as well as things like Japanese wolves, whereas for weapons, it'll be things like katanas, shurikens, and for some odd reason, umbrellas. Wild Hearts also feature various contraptions that players can lay down to attack said creatures. The contraptions showcased so far include a giant hammer, a time bomb, as well as hooks to lock your opponents in place. All in all, the game actually looks pretty darn good and interesting. Most of the comments on YouTube agree with this sentiment as well, but the only thing that everyone is worried about is that EA might find some way to just ruin this game with their infamous microtransactions. Hopefully none of the worries that us players have will come true for this rather good looking title. The game is currently set to be released on the 17th of February for all next-gen consoles, so mark the date in your calendars if you are interested in the title. If horror and slaying large creatures aren't your cup of tea, then maybe the next upcoming title would be. The next title in our Flash News segment is Sackboy: A Big Adventure, featuring the popular PlayStation icon Sackboy, coming to PC. The title will be released on the 27th of October and will support 4K ultra-wide monitors, 120 FPS, NVIDIA DLSS, and much more. So if you have previously enjoyed the title on PlayStation before, you will now be able to enjoy it on a arguably much better console called the PC. Moving on from games that are releasing soon, let's talk about an update that will be available soon for one very popular MMORPG, and that title in question is of course World of Warcraft. Blizzard has just recently announced the 9th expansion of the title, and it will be called World of Warcraft Dragonflight. The expansion will be available on the 28th of November this year and will have a brand new playable race as well as a brand new evoker class for players to try out. Aside from that, there will also be new talent trees for players to tinker with, as well as customizable dragon mounts for players to acquire. Of course, all these updates mentioned are the main selling factors of the upcoming expansion. In reality, there are still a ton of other updates that players can look forward to. So if it's been a while since you last played World of Warcraft, you might want to consider hopping onto the game again and prepare yourself before going into the next upcoming expansion. If you aren't that much of a PC fan, then maybe you might be interested in the two rumors that we have for the PlayStation. The first rumor is on a potential PS5 remaster for Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, quite frankly, I would say that I hope they don't actually remaster the title, as the title is not even that old, making it feel like Sony is just looking for a quick cash grab instead of potentially using their time and resource to create a brand new game for players to enjoy. However, if the next rumor that we have is actually true, then I might understand why Sony is trying to make a quick buck out of their existing titles. The second rumor that we have floating around the gaming scene this week is actually on a supposed jailbreak for the PS5. Yes, you heard that correctly, someone has somehow managed to jailbreak the PS5. While the jailbreak is still at a pretty early phase, because you can literally only download limited time content, emphasis on only download, meaning to say that you can download things like the PT demo but not actually play it. So yeah, the jailbreak is pretty, well, in the early stages, but in any case, this successful jailbreak that was done on the older softwares is still potentially a massive problem for Sony, and we can only wait and see what other damage these jailbreakers can cause. So if you have never played it before, Onrush is a team-based racing game where your objective, other than, well, racing, is to hinder your opponent by crashing into them and taking them out. Of course, you might also get taken out by others, but it's still a ton of fun to crash into other vehicles and make them spin out of control. So if you have previously enjoyed this title before and completely forgot about it, then you might want to revisit this title and give online play a go before the game becomes permanently offline only. Other than servers being shut down, we also have the usual unfortunate game delays. The first title we have is Skull and Bones, being delayed officially for the 5th freaking time, and it will now only be released on March 2023. And that's assuming they don't delay it once again. Moving on to our next title, we have WRC Generations. The original release was set at 13th of October, but it has now been pushed back to 3rd of November, which honestly is not that bad of a delay considering what we just witnessed earlier for Skull and Bones. Anyways, enough about the depressing stuff. Let's talk about some games that you can get your hands on right now. For this week, the main title we will be featuring is Overwatch 2. That's right, with the end of Overwatch, we now have Overwatch 2 officially available on all platforms. And most importantly, the game will now be free to play as well, so that's a huge plus. So I'm quite sure that there isn't much introduction needed for Overwatch, since it was an extremely popular title that I'm sure tons of you have tried before. To top that off, you guys will be pleased to know that if you did in fact own the original Overwatch, upon logging into Overwatch 2, you guys can claim a Founders Pack that comes with some cosmetics as well as the brand new hero that is featured for the first season, Kiriko. If you guys intend to dive back into Overwatch 2, then I actually highly suggest claiming the new character because based on some videos that I've seen thus far, she is an extremely strong support character. Plus, For those of you that are looking to complete the entire character roster of Overwatch 2, claiming Kiriko will help reduce the grind by a ton because based on certain reports, to collect every single character in Overwatch 2, you need around 100 games, which is a pretty sizable amount. So that's basically it for our featured titles for this week. But don't worry, if Overwatch 2 is not the type of game you are looking for, then you might want to consider looking at Steam Next Fest that is currently live on Steam. By clicking into Steam Next Fest, you'll be able to try out demos for hundreds of games. They basically have every gaming genre available there. Action, adventure, strategy, simulation, RPG, puzzles, platformers, sports, racing, multiplayer, controller-based games, and even VR games. You name it, they have it. I myself unfortunately haven't had the opportunity to try out any games yet, as work life can be rather hectic, but if you guys did manage to find any demos that you guys enjoyed a ton, then let us know in the comments so that I can give it a try as well. If you don't like demos but instead just want to enjoy completed games for free, then you will definitely like our last and final segment, Free Things. This week, Epic Games Store is giving out Rising Hell and Slain Back from Hell. As for Prime Gaming, they will be giving out Fallout 76, Total War Warhammer 2, Middle-earth Shadow of War, Glass Masquerade Origins, Loom, Heroes Hour, and Horace. A pretty solid number of games if you ask me. For the console players, don't worry, you guys are getting some pretty cool stuff as well. PS Plus subscribers on the PS4 will be getting Injustice 2 and Superhot, while Hot Wheels Unleashed will be available for both PS4 and PS5 subscribers. Lastly, for subscribers of Xbox Games with Gold, you guys will get the Windbound and Bomb Crew Deluxe editions for you to keep. And that, folks, marks the end of our episode. Once again, I was the host for the week, Ming. Thank you so much for your time and support, and we will see you guys next week in another episode of Game Things.